Just think, 45 years ago, man was going to the moon. I wish I could go to the moon.
Me too. It would be so much fun to walk on 1/6 gravity and then be on another world. I wonder if we'll ever go back there.
I'm sure someone will. Humans are born to explore. We will definitely return to the moon someday.
Only 12 men ever walked on the moon. I'm ready to go. Sign me up.
Me too. I'll go. Let's Explore Astronomy is sponsored in part by I'm sure that people throughout time have dreamt about going to the moon, but it took until the 20th century before we started getting the technology to build and design spacecraft.
Actually, Herc, the Chinese had rockets way back in the 3rd century. By the 10th century, the Chinese had perfected putting gunpowder in tubes and firing them off. They used rockets as both weapons and fireworks for celebrations. The Chinese were even the first to try to launch a man. In the year 1232.
What? Launch a man? Yuri Gagarin was the first man in space in 1961. He was Russian.
I don't say they succeeded. The story goes that in 1232, a man named Wan Hu was seated in a wicker chair that had 47 large rockets attached to it. He had 47 assistants run up, light the fuses, and run for cover.
What happened?
He blew up. Probably. The common story is that when the smoke cleared, wahoo, the chair was gone.
You're not putting me in any chair with rockets attached to it.
I thought you said you wanted to go to the moon. You have to sit in the chair in a capsule on the top of a rocket to do that.
Yeah, a modern spacecraft rocket and capsule. Not a wicker chair with fireworks attached to it. That's suicide. No one should ever try that.
The Chinese were actually well ahead of everybody. When it came to rockets, that is. By the 1500s, they were pretty advanced for rockets for those days. But they quit advancing the technology until now. Today, they have a space station and put people in space. They even landed a rover on the moon. I would not be surprised to see them send a human to the moon soon.
In the 20th century, Russia and the United States dominated space rocketry. Up until then, rockets were used mainly for military use, and not to go into space. But people like Konstantin Tsiolkovsky in Russia and Robert Goddard in the United States started working on building rockets to get to orbit and beyond. Then a man by the name of Wernher von Braun in Germany started to make rockets in the 1930s. After World War II, von Braun and his engineers came to the United States, along with his V-2 rocket. Von Braun got the people, especially the kids of the 1950s, all excited about spaceflight. If I were a kid in the 1950s, I certainly would have been excited about going into space also. Imagine it.
So, Hook, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm gonna be a spaceman and go to the moon and Mars.
A spaceman? Oh, Hook, that is just science fiction. Do you really think that when you grow up, men will be going to the moon?
Of course I do. It's not science fiction. I saw this guy, Wernher von Braun, on TV. He was telling about the new rockets they are designing, and that soon man will be able to be launched into space, and then to the moon and Mars. And this guy is a real live scientist and engineer. It's gonna happen, Miss Teacher, and I'm gonna be part of it. In 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space, and science fiction met science fact. The Americans launched Alan Shepard a month later. Then President Kennedy told the world that we are going to the moon.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish.
Throughout the 1960s, the Soviet Union and the United States put people in space and sent robots to the moon. Test after test after test, successes and failures. Von Braun and his team were soon ready with a monster of a rocket, the three-stage mighty Saturn V. And finally, on July 16, 1969, less than 6 months before the end of this decade, it was ready for the ultimate flight. The mission to land on the moon, Apollo 11.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This is truly an historic morning. Apollo 11, the first mission to land a man on the moon, is all go for launch.
Astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins are on board. Their capsule sits on top of the mighty Saturn V rocket. Just below the capsule in the protective shell is the lunar module, which will carry Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the surface of the moon. The Apollo Saturn rocket is taller than the Statue of Liberty. At liftoff, it will generate 7.5 million pounds of thrust. All systems are a go. We are ready for liftoff.
20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
Here we got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading. Plus 30 seconds. Roll complete and a pitch program.
Good afternoon. After a 4-day journey across space, Apollo 11 is in orbit around the moon. A little earlier, the lunar module, nicknamed Eagle, separated from the command module, nicknamed Columbia. Eagle is now descending to the lunar surface.
Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are in the Eagle. Michael Collins is in the Columbia and will continue to orbit the moon. The Eagle is getting close now. We are only moments away from landing on the moon for the first time in history. Let's listen to the transmission between the Eagle and Mission Control in Houston, Texas.
30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little. 20. Down a half. 30 seconds. Forward. Drift. Ready? Contact light. Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent. Nose control both auto. Descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. Port 13 is in. We copy you down, Eagle. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
They did it! Man has landed on the moon!
This is the most incredible day in history of all history!
The astronauts have some work to do and a bit of resting to do before they put their spacesuits on and open the door of Eagle. Then Neil Armstrong will go down the ladder and be the first person to set foot on the moon.
Stay with us as we bring you all the live coverage of this historic event, Man on the Moon. Good evening, everyone. This is the moment we have all been waiting for. Neil Armstrong has opened the hatch and is coming down the ladder.
I'm at the foot of the ladder. The 11-foot beds are only
compressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches. Although the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Beautiful view. You got something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation. For those who haven't read the plaque, we'll read the plaque that's on the front landing gear of this LEM. There's 2 hemispheres, one showing each of the 2 hemispheres of Earth. Underneath it says, "Dear men from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. It came in peace for all mankind." It has the crew members' signatures and the signature of the President of the United States.
On July 24th, they returned safely to the Earth. Apollos 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17 would also land on the moon.
Apollo 11 only stayed for a few hours. The other missions stayed longer and had more time on the moonwalk. Some even had the lunar rover and were able to drive around on the moon. And Alan Shepard played golf on the moon!
The last man to leave the moon was Gene Cernan. Someday, we will return.
Incredible. Check out our other episodes and let's explore astronomy series at www.tedcookproductions.com/LEA.
You will find all kinds of cool astronomy topics there. Hey, give a shout out to our sponsors, without whom we would not be here. Visit their websites and partake of their services and products. A big thank you to the Yukon Department of Tourism and Culture and Westmark Hotels, Westmark Whitehorse.